Afternoon. As it is 2 p.m., I will call this City Council workshop of January 24th, 2024 to order. This will be both a physical meeting and a virtual meeting. Some members of city staff may be participating via teleconference. Today's meeting may be viewed live on YouTube, Facebook, and available for viewing after the meeting on cable channel 10 HD 1090. Public comment is not normally taken at workshop meetings, although the council may allow or request public participation. And we have no items for action on our agenda today. So with that, everyone is present with the exception of Councilmember Wiesner, and he is going to be 30 minutes late. He's already let us know that, so he will be coming in shortly. So with all of that being said, we will move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the Economic Development Update, and I would like to introduce our Economic Development Coordinator, Mr. Steve McCaslin, to present.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
And
it's there.
Oak Harbor City Administrator Blaine Oborn. Before we start the presentation, I'd just like to give a little introduction while we're loading the slides here for the presentation. So Steve McCaslin's been with us for a year. I appreciate the City Council funding this new position here and really driving into economic development. One of the things that was talked about is nobody's assigned to do it, then it doesn't get done. So we've been able to accomplish a lot of things. I think we will be able to accomplish a lot of things, and that will be kind of discussed and brought up with the achievements we had so far and the things we look forward in the future. So I think it's been an opportunity, it's been a benefit working with him, and I think it really brings value to the community and really drives economic development. With that, I think Steve's going to start off on his first slide talking about economic development, so, and what it is. So go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to, since I was introduced, I don't need to say my name right now. I'm going to talk about what's been going on really in the last year, so you guys all can see what's been happening here. All right, first off though, what's economic development's purpose? It's really about all the things that we do that go toward improving two things. They go toward improving the economic strength of our community, and am I going the wrong direction? Yes, I am. And the quality of life of the people that live here. By a quick background, since there are a couple new faces from the last time I presented here, I came here in 1983, March, so come up on 41 years ago, to fly A6s for the Navy. I did that for a career, retired, went in the corporate world for 15 years, and then for the last 10 years, until a year ago, I had my own business and leadership consulting business that I did. So one of those clients was the Economic Development Council for Island County. For 3.5 years, I spent doing their economic and demographic research, all their reports. If you go to a report on their website, I probably wrote it, and other special projects that their executive director had me do. So that was my intro into economic development in a formal sense. So I'm going to jump right into it here. So the thing that's been with me the longest is the Broadband Action Team, led by Commissioner St. Clair. Really what this is about is the state's going to get $1.2 billion, and they're going to go out and they're going to try, as you can see, they're going to try to figure out what do we do with this money, where do we find these underserved and unserved areas that don't have a minimum level of broadband access, and they're going to fund those things. So Oak Harbor, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, we fall into the served category. So we meet a minimum number of people that meet the minimum criteria to be considered served. So what we're trying to do is find a grant opportunity to go do a gap analysis within the city and see where those pockets might be. We've met with all of the internet service providers that work here in the high-speed broadband area, talk about what they're doing, how we can work together and support those initiatives they have. But why is this important to us? It's important to us for several reasons. The future is information, and if the city's not ready for that, then we're going to be left behind to some degree, probably. Not only that, it makes us more attractive to businesses that may want to come here. And then, on the flip side of that coin, we won't have a business that decides to leave, hopefully. At least this won't be a reason that they can give for leaving, that there's no broadband or their internet's not reliable. So that's kind of why this is important. Next is the comprehensive I'm gonna fly through this because I know we're trying to do this in a certain amount of time today, so if you want me to slow down some, just let me know. Is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, the CEDS, as you guys are familiar with hearing. So I've been representing Oak Harbor and to some extent North Whidbey on this. We did a SWOT analysis all during the summer. I've got that ready to go, and at a future workshop, I'll be presenting that to council. We've submitted all of our documents, inputs to the document, rather. It's going to go through a couple of review cycles. In there, though, we included tie-ins to some things that are going to help us increase our chances to get funding, especially through the EDA, but elsewhere too. Marina in the downtown area, the community center and sports complex, the industrial development, what we call Industrial North, road improvements on SR 20, and several other areas out there. What is this document when it finally comes out, hopefully in July, makes it through all of the hurdles and comes out in July, is, as I said, increased funding opportunities to go after economic development grants so that we can do more here in the city. Central Development Area. Council's high priority for 23 and 24, downtown and marina redevelopment. So I have the lead role in coordinating what we're calling the CDA program efforts out there. It's really creating this plan around the marina, downtown, and what we're calling Midtown, and you'll see that here in a second. And combine those into a sub-area, I hope I got the word right, called the Central Development Area, and basically create a vision from all sorts of infrastructure, housing, and all that for the future, and enable Oak Harbor, our city, to be able to meet the demands of that future and be ready to meet it whenever it comes here, and do what we're supposed to do, grow economically and raise the standard of living of our people. So there'll be more on this as we go down in the next few months for sure. You'll hear more about this. Did I get up there? Okay, I missed there. All right, anyway, is it on the screen in front of you? Okay, good. Then the blue area on that map is what is the marina, no surprise there. The purple is what is downtown or the central business district. And the green area in there is what we call Midtown. So as we move down in the next few months, you'll hear more and more about this and about the efforts that are going on in this area. All right, well, came up that time there. Okay, a year ago, the city purchased a property at the end of Pioneer Way, and we applied for in November and received a $200,000, basically a Brownsfield cleanup grant. 68K of that, though, is set aside for economic development purposes. And so I know you've got a piece of paper, and I'm not trying to steal any of your thunder there, Public Works Director Steve Schuler, but along with this funding, there's a group called C-Clear, I don't remember the name, but there's a paper in front of it. They're also able to help us with stuff, and that's their whole purpose. They're funded by the government, the EPA, and so, yes, sir?
Yeah, I can add a little to that. By us being an applicant for the Brownsfield grant that we're also looking the $1 million for, we're able to get this economic development vision study. They call it V2A, Vision to Action.
Yeah.
So we're able to get that along with the 68,000, and then also the cleanup issue that Steve's going to talk about more
Right.
detail. That's Steve, the Public Works Director, is going to talk about more. That's his focus, is more on the cleanup of that property. So it's real exciting. It really gives us, by purchasing that property, gives us a strategic opportunity to really develop, to look at economic development in a lot wider area.
And we're looking at it as a catalyst, too, for getting things moving here in the city, so especially in the downtown and in the marina area. So the remainder of the money is for what Director of Public Works is going to do, and I'm going to not steal that thunder because he knows that stuff, and I think I can spell most of the words there. We're looking to sell the Goldie Road property, so I'll be coordinating that effort. So you can see where that is. It's Northeast 16th. That comes across on the other side of Goldie Road there, just south of those storage units. So we're going to go to a public sealed bid. And this property was surplused in 2009. And we're going to come back to council with another resolution to surplus it again and then tie it into economic development. And then we'll go through the rest of the steps to sell it. So there'll be more on this coming really soon for you. Did you get up there? All right, business retention and expansion. So back in early December, I attended, as part of the International Economic Development Council, a 2-day course on business retention and expansion. I've attended a lot of training in my life, and I would put this in the top 5, certainly the top 10 of courses I did. It was a very motivating course and sort of a little bit of recalibration for me on a few things that I had one plan for, and they've refocused it, and I'll hit a couple of those here in a minute. But BRE is the most important part of any economic development strategic plan, because it's easier to keep what you have than bring something new in, and it's less expensive to keep them than bring someone else in. So I have, in November, beginning of November, I assumed the role of ombudsman, if you're not familiar with that yet. When someone comes through, any development project comes through, I'm the ombudsman. I'm the champion inside the city. Whether they utilize me or not, that's up to them, but my job is to help them navigate what's going on, not to do it for them, but to help them navigate and be there on their behalf, fight for what they want to do so they can get this project through. You know, I mean, I can't overcome state laws and things like that, but where we can come to agreement on things, that's my role. I'm initiating a business walkabout. I'm going to meet almost 693 to be exact, businesses that aren't home offices in Oak Harbor for a listening tour. Basically, to hear what their experience here has been, get to introduce us at the city so they know who we are, who to reach out to, and begin this business climate survey, which goes to so many other things down the road, especially when you're talking about developing for new businesses to come here. They're going to know what the business climate's going to be. My plan is, where appropriate and when able, to have the mayor and the city administrator join me on that. I'll also have the chamber and the Main Street executive directors where they're available and it's within their purview. I'm going to start with the businesses that are at the top, 50 plus employees. There are about 11 of those, and then work my way down. But I'm doing a multi-axis approach on it. Every week we get a dump of business licenses that come in, and then the permitting and the housing people, they go through, oh, yep, this is good to go. They're set. Once they're approved, then I'm contacting those businesses. So it's going to speed up this process, and then once this is all done, then stay in touch with them at least 2 to 3 times a year, either in person, phone, or email, mostly to make sure any issues that they have being addressed or are being addressed, and that they know we're here to help them. We want them to succeed because it's important for the city and for our economy and for our standard of living. Okay? Okay, they're the same. All right. Speaking of retention, IDEX, if you haven't already heard, is looking to relocate. So in my ombudsman role, I've been working with their general contractor. They submitted a pre-app to us already for a location. If you know where 20 goes out of town and Regatta joins at that triangle in there, there's a lot in there that they have in mind that they're trying to work on. To that, I've met with their their lead guy, Scott Ellis, and they're consolidating from 9 separate buildings on Oak Street, right off Goldie. And I think it's, if I remember right, it's 5 landlords. It might be 4 landlords, but I think it's 5, into one building. So you can imagine the efficiencies they're going to get with that once they successfully get into a facility. All right. Next is what's going on up in North Industrial area. Now I get to use the green light so you can see it. I've been waiting for this. So you can see this red hash line. That really outlines, and so anything to the lower left of that that's not in the shaded area inside the yellow line, which, whoops, I knew I was going to do that. That's not in the, that's city limits. Out in here is the UGA. So what we're doing is working to develop this area here. One more. Got a pretty big thumb, so. Right here you can see this parcel line that comes down, and this is Oak Harbor Street. So what we're doing is working anything from this parcel line down coming back to the east. For Oak Harbor Street, we're looking to get a grant to run the sewage and the water all the way up to Altfield Road. And then we have these other funding sources down there that we're looking into. How do we get other funding, grants, things like that, that we can work on developing that area to make it ready for industries to want to come in here. The Whidbey Task Force, the Navy is the major economic driver in Island County, and 3 surrounding counties. And so we want to make sure that we take care of them. So I was tasked to find who the big players were out there. I did. The 3 biggest players out there are New Leaf, Boeing, and Skookum, and I've met with the heads of each of those and talked to them, what can we do to help them? How are things going? How do we support them so they can support the big economic driver without the city being in the way of something? To a person, staffing is the issue. So I'm going to come to that here in a minute whenever I talk about workforce development. But I meet with these people frequently, not frequently, periodically, I'll say it that way without overstating it, and so that we keep in the loop on what's going on. All right, that one didn't go, no. Okay, I see how it's working now. All right, business creation. There were 31 ribbon cuttings last year. I attended 29 of them. Schedule conflicts were in the way of the others. They're sponsored by both the Chamber and or the Main Street. And what I want to say is city representation is important at these. And so, Mayor, thank you for the ones that you've been to and for all the council members that have been to these. It means a lot to these people. And I encourage you, when you know about them, if you have the availability of time, please show up. Just a word of hi or something, hi, I'm here from I'm from the government and I'm here to help. It means a lot to these people. So anytime you can. And if you're not hearing about them, let me know. I'll make sure that you get the word on them. But I think the messages go out. I'm also working around an incubator program. The EDC has a person, Bristol Carter, who's working on these down on the south end. I want to get it up here. So I'm going to be working with her, with the executive director at the EDC, and then I'm bringing the school district, bring in Skagit Valley College, and any other stakeholder out here that we can get. So how do we set up a place for a business to start up in a lower cost, safer environment so that they can find out early, is this idea going to work before they invest their life savings and then it doesn't work? Okay, workforce development. For those that were here in May at the How Local Economies Work presentation, there were 2 most important issues at the end of the presentation. The second most important is trained or trainable workforce. That's what's going to determine, that's the second most important thing that a company is going to determine whether they stay here or they come here. So we have to fix that, because if you go out, who's tried to get a plumber come to their house recently? Even at the pool. I mean, the struggles to get them to come there, I remember that as part of being attached with the pool. You can't get anyone quickly. They're just not there. So how do we get that? There's a whole different thing around that I don't have time to go into. So to that, I've been working to identify a workforce development task force, and that's a name placeholder. Whether it's a task force or whatever it's going to be, is some sort of organized group to help address this issue. So I've met already twice with Dave Paul wearing a Skagit Valley College hat. He's very excited about it, wants to be part of it. Grand Canyon University. Who's familiar with WorkSource here? So we have an MOU with WorkSource now that was executed, I think, in December. And you know what? They send people over, we can train them, give them an internship, or maybe they're already trained on something, they can work there, and it's paid for by WorkSource. So it's 4 to 6 months of, I don't want to say free labor, but a chance to give someone some more experience so that they can go out and do it, but it's no cost to us other than maybe a desk and whatever they work with here. And then you can see on the last bullet there all the other organizations that I'm going to be bringing in on this, because this is going to be a big deal. If we're going to have companies come here, we've got to have a workforce that they can use. All right, affordable housing. I call it, and I'm seeing it more in the economic development circles, available/affordable housing, because it's really, I'm going to break it simply into high, middle, and low income socioeconomic groups. The bigger problem is down at the low end, and when you get into the middle, the low to middle portion of the lower half of the middle income group there. How do we find housing that's available for each of those groups? That's the big thing. Yes, the low income people right now are really struggling. There are Navy military service members that live in Cedro-Woolley and drive here every day. And so we have to do something about that. It's not the same Oak Harbor that I was in the Navy in here when it comes to finding a place to live. The Executive Services Administrator and I met with Habitat, so we're working with them we've got ongoing discussions with them. How can we support them and they support us in these efforts, and Habitat does good work out there. And I've worked in the ombudsman role with a couple of the developers. In fact, there's one of them that just submitted a bid Friday for the affordable housing project that they've got on Swantown Road, if you're familiar with that. So those bids went in Friday. They're going to probably early February. I talked to the guy yesterday about it. Well, that's my next bullet. George Hernandez is the affording housing specialist. I'm going to be meeting with him in person. We've talked on the phone a few times. In February, after they award this thing, how we can work together and bring that reality into Oak Harbor as well. And community engagement's big. I talked about the business climate survey up there, but there are other surveys. What I want to avoid doing is having death by survey. So we'll space those out, but there are other economic workforce things, lots of things that we need to find out what the community feels about and how things are going from their perspective. I said back in May I was going to start this education campaign, which is basically taking that course on how local economies work. You can see where it's been given right now, where it's going, and I'm going to be working to create an on-demand video, which will make it speed up access to people even more, that'll be housed on our website and our YouTube channel. Any strategic plan for economic development has to have business development. How do we support our businesses out there? How do we help them set the conditions for their success, really is what it comes down to. So the Chamber, Main Street, and we at the city sponsor a monthly thing called Business Builder, and I do these seminars. It's around business or leadership topics, and they're given monthly, hopefully to raise knowledge in different areas of running a business for people. I've had about 20 attendees so far, and it's been received pretty well. The next one's February 6th. If you go to the Chamber website, you can sign up for it, or send me a query, and I'll send you the link to it, and feel free to attend and see how it goes, see what's going on there. All right, I'm not going to read this slide, but from an economic development outreach, you can see all the people around the region that I'm interacting with now. In the last year, I've met these people, and we've worked together on a couple of things. Some of us, we just talk now and then about, hey, what are you doing? Well, we're doing this type of thing there. So this is important to know what other people are doing. In fact, you just sent me today that email about what's going on around parking down in Bremerton, which ties right into the CDA. So that was really a timely email, and I'll be talking to James Davis about that. Okay, get the next one going. So, economic development strategic plan. That's kind of the main, there are a lot of deliverables that I bring, but that's kind of the one that's the working document. The last one was done in 2013. I read it, it was a very good document, but it's outdated in a lot of areas. So I've been working for the last year on, putting that together, but it's a gigantic document, and there's a lot of moving parts. It also is a component of the comprehensive plan. As you all know, that's coming up here in about a year and a half or so when that thing's due. So I'm hip deep supporting that effort with Public Works, Development Services, around infrastructure and development projects that are going on, with Parks and Rec, around the economic development component of what they're doing, in particular community center, sports complex type of opportunity that they're looking at. Okay, wrap up. So I went fast. I'm always available to talk if people want to, just call me and I will make time to talk. And this is a high-level overview. There are 7 pages. This is my activity sheet. This is what I do. So there are 7 pages in here of things that I follow every day and meet with the city administrator once a week to go over what's going on. But as far beyond, it's not just activities. These things that we do are catalysts too. And they help create that environment we're trying to create so businesses can prosper and businesses can sustain what they have. And having someone focus on this is what's enabled a lot of these initials to occur. And a lot of this stuff's going to go unnoticed to you. You're just not going to know a lot of the things I'm doing. You could call me every day and I can tell you. And I'm glad to do that if that's what you want, but I don't think you want to waste your time with that. But look at it like a football game. You get the ball on the goal line, it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 7 yards in a cloud of dust. You're moving the ball down the field toward the goal. That's what you're trying to do. And that's a lot of what economic development does, is you get the ball, you run it, and every now and then you get that Hail Mary pass that, oh, that's a big win for us. But then now you're back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust. The achievements that we've made so far, I give credit to Public Works Director, of course, my boss, the city administrator, the deputy city administrator, all the development services, admin, finance people, because I've been overly impressed with the level of support and teamwork that occurs here. I didn't think it wasn't going to be there, but I was suppressed at the level. I've never once been turned down when I've asked for help for something. So I thank all of you all for the support that I've gotten here. And it's that teamwork that's allowing businesses, individuals, and the community to do what I said our primary goal was at the beginning of the thing: improve our economic strength and the quality of life of the people here. So, okay, there it is. Now it's up there. So going forward, as all of you probably know, this position is funded only for 2 years. So I'm in year 2 now. A lot's been accomplished in this year, but there's a whole lot more to go, and all the things that need to be done won't be done in the next year. In fact, it's constantly. There's always a constant churn of stuff going on out there. So how do we keep it going? In coordination with the deputy city administrator. I think you all have seen this at council meeting before, but there's a plan to use business license fees that can be used to fund this position, and then many of the activities that go on there. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'm available for questions, whether you have them now or whether you'd like to get me one-on-one. I'm good either way.
All right. Thanks, Steve. And now I will turn it over to council for questions, comments. Mr. Councilmember Stuckey, yes.
You have a bit of an ambiguous role,
Okay?
which is okay. But we all maybe have a different vision of what that role looks like. I'm curious, as you mentioned, this role was for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, if a community member were to ask me, is it a success? What metrics do you think could be used after 2 years to say, yes, it's a success because of this, this, and this? Because as you mentioned, a lot of what you do goes unnoticed. Mm-hmm. What tangible things could be shared at the end of 2 years, not necessarily at this current moment, in your opinion, that would say it's a success, this position, and it was a smart move?
It's a good question.
I will take a stab at that right off the bat, and then you can kind of get your thoughts together there. So what you're talking about is kind of key performance indicators, KPIs, and so one of the challenges of economic development, and this is interesting because I've talked to our county economic development corporate counsel, and she's kind of said that too. It's just really not as tangible as you like. Sometimes there is jobs, sometimes there is areas, so it's been a little challenging there. But some of the successes we're talking about is the SEDS that we never had, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, really getting on the business retention and expansion, really knocking on the doors, being in the availability and keeping businesses here. Small areas there, and working with the development, with IDEX, with the hotel that's talked about, and those other areas there. So it's really a lot of small wins, I think, in the success there. And so, and Steve, you're welcome to kind of elaborate on that a little bit.
You hit probably the gist of it, but the other thing is there are lots, like I said, there are a lot of moving parts. Keeping those things in play, but that's not something that someone out there is going to see. They're not going to see that 17 different initiatives are being kept lassoed into place. A new business coming into town, a big business, I'm talking about like a manufacturing company, that's a big win. That's visible. That's something that people can see. But those things don't happen right off the bat, and they don't happen. There was no one in this role for 6.5 years before I came into it. So that's 6.5 years that if anything was being done toward economic development, it was a little bit of piece here, or maybe something over here, but there was nothing coordinated and nothing keeping it all together. So it might be a question that may not be able to be answered in there are 17 things that were accomplished that are going to make your life a lot better, but all those things that are being done right now are things that are going to lead to those 17 things that you're going to be able to see. And I don't know that by the end of this year, I'll tell you what, one of my goals by the end of this year, to have the Economic Development Strategic Plan done. And then whether it's gone through approval or not, that's one of my goals. Will I achieve it? I hope, but who knows? Keeping IDEX in town would be a goal. Because they could leave, and they've talked about it.
But to also elaborate on that, I mean, I didn't go into other areas we're working on with the Central Development Area, really pulling that off, doing the visioning that we get with these grant funding. So I certainly this is going to be a team effort, and I have our Development Services Director and our Public Works Director, but having somebody in an economic development role really helps us in achieving those goals there and pushing together as a team.
But if I may for just a second, Counselor, what would you like to see by the end of the year?
Good spin. I don't know the realisticness of it by the end of the year. To me, it's easier to identify things that are more tangible and use those as wins.
Okay.
Right? Bringing in businesses is a win. How much that would be directly because of your involvement or people who just would be happy to open a business, it's a little difficult to differentiate
True.
those. I mean, we talk about retaining businesses. There's a lot of businesses that may be retained whether your role was here or not, and sometimes a little hard to communicate that. So I would say for me, if I was looking at the job description, what were the wins? Two things. More businesses coming in, that we can see some sort of a link that your role helped that facilitate that.
Okay.
And then two, I did find it interesting with reviewing proposed ordinances and codes that can relate to economic development and proposing changes, taking any barriers that we may have. A lot of times we hear things from developers, it's just so hard to develop in Oak Harbor. I'm not a developer, so I hear things like that, I'm like, well, what is it? Is it our permitting process is slow? Are we putting up artificial roadblocks? So removing those barriers where I could have developers say, you know, it is a nice place to develop here. And those are subjective things. So I understand it's not as simple as X to X. But I would say those two things for me would be the most tangible things I would think would be a win. I understand that may not be 2 years, but we just want to make sure that we're not throwing money just at the hope of things happening. And so I don't envy you in trying to fight for your position, and I'm certainly open-minded, but that would be my thought process.
Thank you, because it helps me to understand what you're. I know, and I'm open at any time to have one-on-ones with any of you to talk about what's your view and what's your vision and things like that you see as economic development. But the ombudsman role, to the one thing you talked about the overcoming the obstacles, the codes, and how do we do that? Right now, I can tell you that Development Services has a how to get to yes mentality. I've been more than impressed with that. But the ombudsman role is those things that you're talking about, and I'd love to talk with you more about them offline, the specific things. I can go work those and try and address those things, and maybe we come back up with a way for council to approve a change to those things too that are in the way. So that's another way to do it, but I have to know them. In this ombudsman role, I'm going to get to know a whole lot more about these things. Only 3 months into it, but you know, I've learned a lot about a lot of things already, and so I hope that answers your question adequately.
It does, and I appreciate this presentation because it is nice to hear things. And you know, if I were more curious, it sounds like you have a list I could look at. Yeah, so I appreciate it, and keep us informed and keep us in the loop.
Okay. Anyone else?
Councilmember Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I have a couple comments, but first I would like to know what Steve Schuler was going to say.
Thank you
Looked like
very
you had
much,
something to
Councilmember
add.
Eisen. I'll be very brief. Just having worked in a city in King County and a city in Snohomish County for 20-plus years, and now being at Hope Harbor, the communication I've heard at many council meetings, right, and at those cities, is that we often focus on the expense side, right, like you do. What are our expenses? But it's the revenue side that really, I would say about 20, 25 years ago, a lot of cities and counties woke up and created an economic development position because they realized you don't get to have a police officer unless you have the revenue. And the focus of a lot of your citizens, as you know, is to drive down property taxes. They don't want any more. Drive down your utility taxes. So what's left? Sales tax. And that's how a lot of cities make it, or they don't. And so that was just that brief background. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really, yeah, that's a really good perspective. I appreciate that. I love, one of my favorite, it sounds like you've been very busy, but one of my favorite things is the ombudsman thing. I love that we have someone on staff who can act as a facilitator for people trying to navigate the process. I think that would be one of, if someone were to ask me in 2 years, what was the benefit of an economic development coordinator, one of my answers would be, if someone comes to me, if a developer comes to me and says, I'm having a real hard time and blah, 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 and the city is making it hard, that I actually have a name and a phone number that I can send them to and say, you know what, this person is going to help clear things up for you. And that's really nice versus just, I don't know, go to the website, talk to staff. Because, planning, they're busy.
Yeah.
They can't hold people's hand through the process. So love that. In 2 years, I would also like to be able to say that our economic development coordinator has physically gone to and visited with every single business in the city. What did you say? It was like 600 something?
693.
Maybe not doable in 2 years, but.
Oh, I'm shooting for this year.
It's a goal. Okay, well, let us know when you do. And that's a moving target, of course. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the SWOT results in July. Really looking forward to that. I appreciate you kind of aggregating all of this information and then presenting it to us. But I think the most important thing that you've been doing, in my humble opinion, is building relationships. Because you can't go anywhere until you've actually visited with and introduced yourself and say, I'm here as a resource. Build all of those relationships so then, when somebody has a bright idea or a suggestion, they know specifically who to call. Sometimes it's just, that's the hardest part, is I don't even know who to ask my question to. So, yeah, I love it so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Heisen and Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Steve, for the presentation. I guess kind of piggyback on Councilmember Stuckey. In my last 20 years of business, I've dealt with advertising, right? And the biggest thing in advertising is return on investment. So what is our return on investment? We've invested a good deal amount in this position, and then at the end of 2 years, what can we take a look at and say, okay, this was a win for us? So for me, I totally understand the BRE. And what I guess I would like to see or hear is, what business specifically have we worked to retain? How have you helped to grow that business? I mean, as opposed to bringing somebody in, what specifically did we do to retain a business? And how many businesses did we do that with? And how did we help that business to grow? And I'd also like to see that workforce development task force. I mean, that is an underlying issue that we hear in almost every industry, not just the three that you mentioned, but lack of an available workforce is key to for many of our businesses here in the community. And so if that is something that we could get underway and actually up and running, then I think that's a huge win for the position and a huge win for our community. And so, and then naturally the comprehensive development or the plan. Now, you said the last plan that we had was in 2013. How much of that was actually implemented? How much of it was followed? I mean, I've not heard of that plan, and so how many pieces of it were actually followed through on, or was it just a plan that was written and then was never utilized?
I wish I could answer that as accurately as you'd like me to. My sense is that it probably started off and then efforts sort of just fell to the side. I don't know that much of it was implemented. But then that may go back to not having someone in a role whose job is to make things move forward and that type of thing too. So, I mean, I wish I could answer it accurately for you, but I think not much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. To add to that, I think when we talk about the CDA and all these plans, we've done a lot of planning, we know that, and I think our Public Works Director will talk about that too in his presentation. Our key here as staff and as directors and leaders of this community and leaders of the city is really to get the plans updated and implement. And that's the key. So we want to be able to really, over time, really look back and say, okay, we took this off incrementally, pretty everything's incrementally, but having those plans and not having what you're talking about where we never implemented the plan. So the key here is really having the team together where we have the capacity and the will and the ability to do the plan and then turn around and implement it. So that's the area that I really want to focus on here. And so we just don't have another plan that sits on the shelf.
Thanks, Councilmember Marshall. Any other comments or questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Wiggenstein.
Thank you for that presentation. I appreciate the info and a lot of it coming at us in a very quick time. One of the things that pops in my head is, I just really have a question. Do you have any examples, or even hypothetical examples of how the city can assist these small businesses stay in the city, right, and do and whatnot? I mean, we talk about supporting local businesses, but how can we do that? What are some examples of what we might do to do that?
Okay, so Business Builder, that monthly seminar I run, talks about business issues. This next month in February, it's marketing. How do you market better? And of course, we know we want a return on investment, but some investments take longer to get a return on. Marketing hopefully doesn't take that long to get a return on. The other thing is bringing them access to what the resources that are available to them. Small Business Administration. The EDC has Christina Hines, yeah, who's the with the Small Business Development Center. So she doesn't work for Sharon, but she's embedded in EDC's office in Coopville. So she's a resource and she's a free resource for these people that want to go there. So I think when it comes down to it, where I can help them navigate the city, or where I can get them to resources that can help them elsewhere, that's really the obvious things that we can do to benefit businesses when they come and go, I need help.
And so with that, and further, like, those are what's in place right now. I'm familiar with the SBA and the EDC and what they do and everything. And it sounds like the Business Builder, I've heard from some people I know that are attending that through Workforce and DSHS. I don't know if that's your program or if that's a different one. What would you like to see us be able to do as a city beyond just those couple of things?
Well, I need an army of people, but I'd like to be able for us, me, and the city, to be more present, to be able to lead turn some of these issues that we might see coming. When we see the economic landscape changing, what's coming, the pandemic, people that lost, how many people lost businesses? A lot of people lost businesses. How many people shifted and take a restaurant that was able to go, oh, now I'm going to do delivery or curbside pickup. They've never done that before. So how do we help businesses be prepared for when things like that come? And there are examples. We just lived through a 2-year example of how important that is. Resiliency, I guess, is the word. And that would be, how do we help make them more resilient? Again, we can't cover everything for them, and we can't get in and run their business for them. And that's having been a business consultant for 10 years, I can work with a client all day long, but if they don't listen, then I can't do anything. I don't go in and do the work for them. Yeah. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it gives me some hope, right, in what we're doing and whatnot. And you had mentioned earlier on, shifting gears just a little bit, you had mentioned earlier on about making sure if we needed connection for the ribbon cuttings and anything else going on. I'm finding that juggling multiple calendars is part of what we do as business owners and people in our community. Calendar invites to the city email would be the best way to make sure it gets on a calendar and a schedule, because they automatically link to my calendar that I can take a look at. And I don't mind checking the multiple devices, but I have a hard time, if it's not on that calendar, I'll miss the email reminder that, oh yeah, hey, this is happening on Saturday. Invites I may not be able to make it, but at least I'll know what's on the calendar to do it, and I can juggle that a lot easier than trying to just remember. So
You missed the
that's
good
just a
one Saturday,
suggestion.
didn't he? Because they had food. So I'm gonna. Well, I didn't wear a sport coat and everything so that Counselor Stuckey could look better than me. So I took one for the team, as he said Saturday. So the question then to council, would you, when I find out about these, would you like me to shoot an email calendar invite to all of you?
So
No?
just so you're aware, the administrative executive team's already taken this under advisement this week, and we're working on that for city
Beautiful.
council.
Okay, so they'll
Yeah.
get, you
Yeah.
guys will get it.
We're working on that, yeah.
Okay,
So,
great. I don't want to duplicate effort.
yeah, that's why I was just saving you some time, so.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah. Was that all? All right, thank you, Councilmember Wittgenstein. Anything else from council? Questions, comments? All right, well, I guess with that then, we'll say thank you, sir, for your presentation,
Thank you for your
and
time.
we'll move on to the next topic. So next, we have under Development Services, our Flood and Damage Prevention Code Amendment. And I would like to introduce our senior planner, Dennis LaFair, to present the information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I assume you can all hear me. Good afternoon, council. I am going to present kind of a high-level approach as to what we're looking at as far as code amendments to our flood damage prevention chapter in our municipal. Hit the mute on willing, have a share screen here. And I hope you can all see that PowerPoint presentation. But what really got us started on looking at our flood damage prevention portion of our code was a community assistance visit that was provided by the Department of Ecology. Any community that participates in the flood insurance program through FEMA is basically, which is administered by the Department of Ecology at the state level, is required to have a meeting with ecology representatives so that they can have a chance to go through some of our permitting for development that has occurred in the floodplain, and also to, basically respond to any questions we might have about permitting for developments in the floodplain. Also gives them an opportunity to look at our code and see if there's any areas that need to be updated to remain in conformance with the ecology's flood regulations and FEMA's flood regulations. Our code was last updated in 2017, so it was fairly good timing for them to take a look at and kind of refresh what our code is requiring. They did have a community assistance visit back in about a year ago at this time, and we had development services folks, building official was present, and we met with the ecology representatives. As a result of that meeting, we received a fairly lengthy list of recommended and mandatory changes to our code, which I attached as part of your packet with attachment 1. But keep in mind that these amendments that we're looking at will be only effective in the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain, which is basically, I tried to attach the FIRM map, the flood insurance rate map, to your packet. So if you have any questions on that, we can pull that up later. One of the big changes that occurred about, maybe 2008, I'll say, is the National Marine Fisheries Service investigated some of the developments that were occurring in the FEMA floodplain and indicated that, hey, time out here, some of those developments weren't addressing the impacts to the Endangered Species Act. So they prepared a biological opinion, which essentially has required, since that time, 2010-ish, most developments to assess how their development is going to be consistent or in conformance with the Endangered Species Act, let alone all of the floodplain requirements that structures need to go through. In review of that biological opinion, the Federal Emergency Management Agency basically told communities that you have 3 approaches that you can address this biological opinion. The first is to basically create a model ordinance, which means that you do everything that ESA and the National Marine Fisheries Service is requiring you to do. Prove that your existing code meets those ESA requirements. That's basically called Door 2. Or remain in Door 3, which most communities were at that time, and that's review each permit individually with the developer creating a separate habitat assessment for their development proposal. Very costly, timely, and not very suitable for economic development. So what the city has done is basically being a little bit proactive here, which is a good thing. We had a consultant come on board and prepare a habitat assessment for all of the properties within the 100-year floodplain. That habitat assessment is attachment 3 to your packet. And basically what we are proposing to do is moving from Door 3, which I explained before, where we look at each development permit on an individual basis requiring a separate habitat assessment, to actually having a programmatic habitat assessment for all properties within the floodplain. That, in a sense, is, it certainly helps create conformance with previous applications and also all future applications within the floodplain for meeting the ESA. This is one of the big steps to actually helping us possibly reduce the flood insurance premiums for the buildings within the floodplain. That system is called the community rating system. We are still looking into and coordinating with ecology on what some of the other steps might be, and some of the monitoring, some of the other administrative issues with this program. We're working with, obviously, Ginger Bennington, our building official, who will be administering this program very closely. In fact, I think she's on board this afternoon. So if all of these pieces come together with the new code, the habitat assessment, citywide habitat assessment, we are setting ourselves up to actually reduce some of the annual insurance premiums that are paid for by some of the structures within this floodplain. So where do we go from here? I know this is your first touch on this information, so what I probably will be doing is bringing it back to your workshop in February. I'll have the code actually in red line, strike through an underlined version so that you can see where those changes are going to occur. And then we'll also have some more information on that community rating system to see what impacts there will be to our community for that. We've already had a couple of presentations with the Planning Commission, so we're gearing up for a public hearing at their next meeting in February. And then hopefully, if the council is willing, we'll take it to our public hearing and adoption at one of your April meetings. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I know Ginger's on board. She's got a lot more information when it comes to structural development and floodplain permitting. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and help answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Dennis. And with that, I will turn it over to council for questions or comments. Yes, Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this is for Dennis or for Ginger, but I noticed, probably one of the largest redevelopment properties in our downtown core is included in this floodplain, and I think we all know that in our hearts at some point in time that large area of asphalt that once was a car dealer, is going to be redeveloped. I mean, there's probably, more denser uses than what's there, and especially with, the future conversation we're having about the 2025 comp plan update and, the whole, number of new households and the business is going to have to support. So I guess my question is, what does this add to somebody looking to redevelop that property versus our current code? I understand, that we're taking away some of the individual habitat requirements that by having a format, but what are we adding to that process?
We're actually taking away some of that process. So for the developer down there in that area that's going to do an assessment, he doesn't have to do an assessment. So that can save anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 on that project. And it's something that takes the worry out of that developer because he already knows it's been taken care of. He already knows he's not going to have to mitigate, because once you have to mitigate, then it quadruples the cost. So that's a real plus for the community, and that's why I'm so proud of what the city of Oak Harbor did. They've taken a burden off of the citizens, and they've taken a burden off of the developers, and they've made it a smooth process. So it's really going to be beneficial.
Yes, could I just, to be clear, there's a lot in that document, right, that's looking to make sure that our code meets all the column E requirements. But most of that stuff is existing in the IRC code, existing elevation flood certificates and all that stuff is already required. We're not adding any additional layers to any of that. We still have all of the standard floodplain requirements already in place. We're just taking the habitat portion out of it and by having a uniform approach.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner and Ginger. Anyone else on council have any comments or questions? All right, well, with that, we will say thank you for your presentation, and we will move on to the next item, which is under Public Works and our Public Works update. And with that, we have Mr. Steve Schuler here with us today.
Thank you so much. You're right, I know we have a hard stop for today's workshop, and so I'm going to go through this even faster than what we proposed. First of all, this isn't to do a deep dive on any subject. It's really to make sure we continue to have a common foundation going forward, and especially as we work together in the 2025-2026 budget, which we'll be doing very soon. I'm very proud to be here tonight to represent the Public Works Department. You should know, if you don't already, that we have a very intelligent, very hardworking crew, and I'm very proud just to be here to represent them. We're going to go over 10 subjects, and so I'm going to ask our city engineer, Alex Warner, to touch base on the first 4.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, Council, Mayor. So 2023, we were very successful. The key capital projects completed. We had projects for parks, sewer, streets, water, and storm. 3 of these projects were designed in-house, saving the city an estimated $150,000 that would have otherwise gone to outside consultant engineers. We can use that money for our projects in 2024. They're listed here on the screen. One that you might not be too familiar with, Island County came to us for an interagency paving project they're going to lead. It is Heller Street from Barrington to Swantown, and Swantown from Heller to Fairway Lane. We are going to be focusing on our water supply in the next several years. We bring crisp, clean mountain river water from the Skagit River. It goes into a clean water, or I should say a water treatment plant the city of Anacortes owns and operates in Mount Vernon. We bring that to our city through these transmission mains. They're reaching the end of their life cycle. We distribute it out to our citizens. We do have a lot of infrastructure that will have to be replaced within the CDA for that water system. And it's critical that we have that because there are ongoing efforts by the Navy to clean up the groundwater contamination of PFAS. And you can find out more information about that at the Thursday, February 1st open house meeting. Look online for more information on that open house. Thank you.
Well done, Alex. That was a lot in a short time frame. All right, so Public Works, and I'm going to go, because again, many of you know this, when you look at the budget, you can't really find Public Works. It's really 7 different departments, right? So we have a clean water facility. A lot of these have separate funding, separate rules. We have a water division. We have what we call a collection division, which is made of both stormwater and our sewer distribution system, solid waste, a streets division, a central services division that serves not only Public Works, but serves all the equipment, vehicle purchasing, facility needs for the entire city, whether it's the police department, city hall, et cetera. And we also have an engineering division, and you just heard from Alex Warner, our city engineer. All right, again, when you look at the budget, you really don't see Public Works, and so just for 2023, the budget is around $53 million, and here's just an example of many of the different funds that make up Public Works. We've talked about this already. I think this is fun, that I have fun with demographics, and so in the last 10 years, we now have 15 million more people over the age 65 than we did 10 years ago from our last census. We now have 1 million less people under the age of 18 than we did 10 years ago. No wonder why we're having an issue finding people to come work at our fast food restaurants here in Oak Harbor, right? They were never born. And so a big issue we're dealing with is the skilled trades, it is engineers, it is the competition from high tech, it is our local competition. What I want you to know, in just this last year, we lost 15% of our workforce in Public Works. We lost 2 to the Navy, we lost 1 to a utility district, we lost 1 to the state, we lost 1 to the oil refineries, et cetera. And so the competition is real, and those rates are really going up quickly to keep track of that competition. So this is something we're having to manage. We're really excited about the new people we've attracted to come work here. We look for people who can work together as a team, that are intelligent, that can work in the trades or work in engineering, but a lot of times they don't know our business, and so we're having to teach them our business. And so, be supportive of us as we bring these new people on and show them how we do our work. Here's something that's not very well known in North America, and especially on the West Coast. Someone has 5 acres and it's owned privately, and they subdivide it and they create a whole bunch of development, and now you have 30 homes, and they put in water lines and sewer lines and streets, and guess what? They give all of that to the city for free. And it's wonderful. It's nothing but revenues for 75 years. And a lot of us on the West Coast, that's all we know. We've only lived this positive part of it. Revenues, no expenses. Well, what's happening in the West Coast now? Like what was happening in the Midwest and what's happened on the East Coast. Suddenly now that water line needs to be replaced, and you need hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when you replace that water line, you don't get to do it in raw land like the private developer did. You have to go out and close that street like we did in West Woodby. You have to talk to the school district. You have to deal with each of those homeowners and when you're going to turn off their water. And so Oak Harbor, a lot of our areas, our midtown, our downtown, our marina are all entering that 75-plus year. So the expenses are coming due. And the exciting part is we're going to talk about it all this next year. So I'm very excited to see where we're going to go. This is a real thing. Here is the capital of one of our states, Mississippi, Jackson. They ignored their water system for decades. They had a leak, I couldn't believe it, that went on for 12 years, massive, millions of gallons of water. And the National Guard had to bring in bottled water in order for 300,000 people to be able to drink water in the United States of America. So this is something that's real. It's not just an academic exercise. But we're going to do awesome here in Oak Harbor. Clean water facility. Here's the exciting part. Your membranes are going to need to be replaced in about the year 2030. We're going to start talking about that now. We're already working with the mayor and Blaine to figure out how we can get federal and state funding to fund that. So we're looking ahead to the year 2030 about how we can have the revenue available to replace something that we're not having to look at for another 6 or 7 years. All right, council's number 1 goal, and that's the central development area. So just a few topics on this. All right, there's really 3 options that we can continue to pursue. We can return to rural. And this means that you have low cost, low service. And if you live in the rural areas here in Whidbey Island, you can have a septic tank and a groundwater well, and in front of your house, there's no sidewalk, and you know what I mean? And again, it's an option, and a lot of our parts in Oak Harbor can return to that. Or you can, once your infrastructure gets old, you can figure out how you want to redevelop it, right? And this is low cost and high service. You have great city services, you have restaurants, you have businesses, and if you do it right, it's low cost. But if you stick in this middle area, and this is the part I'm really going to encourage all of us, get out of this middle. This is high cost, low service. And again, we've got lots of examples of how that is impacted here at Oak Harbor. When the community has asked, what option do we want? When I've met with David Kuhl and others and Blaine Oborn and looked at those, what has the citizens, the business, and community leaders said? So here's a plan from June of 1990. They said, redevelop, get going. Back in 1990, what did they say in the 2000s? Redevelop. What did they say in 2010? Redevelop. We've got lots of beautiful plans that have wonderful renderings and really want us to move forward with this. And so, but we've had a lot of inconsistencies, right? We built a beautiful new clean water facility. 0% was charged to new growth. 100% was being charged to existing citizens. But guess what? Last year, the council got together and we've resolved this problem, right? We're on a path to make our finances match up with what our vision is. So good job. We're moving in the right direction. Again, rural is not bad. You're going to have a big discussion about what to maintain in the rural when it comes to the areas that are in our joint planning area. And I know our mayor is meeting with our commissioners, and we're going to be having those conversations, and the council members will too. And again, we want to preserve these beautiful rural areas. That's why we live here in Oak Harbor. It is a value. But if you keep it rural, that doesn't mean that's going to be a place for a new restaurant. If we redevelop, that's, again, new housing, that's opening up new businesses. And so we can hear from a lot of folks that say, I want no change. But I'm just trying to repeat the message that there's no such thing as no change. If you're in the infrastructure business, you realize there's decay and there's redevelopment. Nothing stays the same. We as humans don't, we get older, things happen to us. It's the same with everything else. It has a limit and it needs to be redeveloped. So again, don't stay in this middle. It is so tempting to want to stay in this area, but it is very impactful to the citizens to live here for very long. So a couple things on this commercial development area, having gone through this before. The citizens have already done the visioning. The councils have already approved it. We have a 55-foot height, that's a 5-story building in our central business district. There's been meeting after meeting in Planning Commission, and that vision's already in place of what that is. And let me tell you what that means. That means we don't want mid-rise. We don't want to be a Redmond or a Linwood with, 8-story buildings. We've said no to that. But we want to see this mixed use. We want to create more housing. We want to create a viable, livable city where people will come and congregate and we can be together. And so that is the vision that has been created over and over again, and that's already, I've learned working with this great team and working, that's already been put in place. Here's a couple of things. I'm just going to touch on 2 tonight. We have to address this parking requirement. We have a really old 1960s is what I call it parking requirement. It's not applicable to today. And with the new stormwater regulations, the cost to go build that surface parking is insane, is the short version of that story. And so we need to talk and have a very serious question of whether we want to have a place surrounded by a bunch of very expensive parking lots, or we want to have an exciting, livable place. And there's tons of examples on this, but I'm not going to go through them all, but when we have 3 more hours, let's go through them. Secondly, is when I've looked at the zoning code, it has our backs turned on the water. If you imagine if we get to go forward with these 5-story buildings, which again are already zoned, you can go buy a property right now and you can go do it. It's legal. But when it happens, when you go through that and you go through that process, you realize we're going to have our back turned on the water. It's all private. We don't require any retail or a public on the bayshore side of the property. And that's something to me that really needs to be addressed. And this is not uncommon. This is in a lot of different codes where this has had to be turned around. So on parking, as an example, just one example out of literally thousands, the Spokane City Council has eliminated all parking minimums within a half a mile of a bus line. That is like 80-90% of the entire city of Spokane has no required parking. This is going on over and over again because people are having to get real with where we are today on what it takes to build affordable housing. And what does the new generation want versus what the old generation wanted? And they're different things. Again, when I look at Oak Harbor, and you know this, we're talking to the choir, right? Our beautiful asset is this unbelievably gorgeous place we live in, this beautiful harbor that bears our name, right? And that waterfront. And so, as an example, just down in Mukilteo, the Port of Everett and the city of Mukilteo, they're turning their backs toward the water. It was turned against it. It was industrial down there. You didn't want to look what was going on down there. It was a tank farm, right? We had stored fuel. And now they're, right, this is just off the work they're doing right now. They're turning their back. You can see their accesses to the water. That's where they're going to make their investments. As you know, just making sure we're on the same page, WashDOT has assigned $30 million to SR20. This is going to be a big thing. Alex and I have been working on this already. We have already worked with the mayor and with Blaine. We have already told our representative, Dave Paul, that we are committed to taking over that project for the state if need be. The state can't find enough engineers and tradespeople to carry out this work, so they're asking, can the local agencies help take on the management of this project? And we have told them in a letter that the mayor signed that, yes, we can. Now, again, this does not happen for a few years. They're talking about the design starting in 2026, 2027, but we're already trying to get set up to be in a place to make that project happen. All right, last slide. Kaz, it's been a great team effort. We got this $200,000 grant, so what are you going to see next? We are working on the environmental investigation. That's about half the money. I've already reached out to consulting firms. They're going to be sending me a draft scope, and we'll be working with you on that. That'll be installing groundwater wells, is what that will end up being. We just met with architects, and we've just selected one, a group that includes David Kuhl, Ray with the planning department, Kaz and myself have interviewed these teams, and so that's an architect to focus on our city-owned property and to do renderings and to show what does a 5-story building look like on our city-owned property. If we actually met the vision that has already been approved by the city, what does that look like? And what are those ramifications? We're going to try to show you what does it look if you turn your back toward Bay Shore, right, and try to create something that's focused and the public and the retail is on the Bay Shore side, right? We want to go through those with you and with our community stakeholders and get that input. So I know I'm going very fast, but what will you see next? We're going to put those together. We're going to meet with them on those scopes, and we're going to come back to you late February or March with these agreements and recommendations for both the environmental scientists and for the architects to move forward with these processes. And then as Kaz mentioned, I put on your dais a group that we're working with, a nonprofit, and the great work by Wendy Horn through the EPA that Blaine mentioned, we can have them come and they're willing to provide us, let's say they provide us with $200,000 of public outreach and public engagement, with renderings, with economic analysis. What they would like is about a 10% match. So for $200,000, it would cost us about $20,000. So we now have in place, we can move forward with all the professional staff we need to move forward with this visioning. And thank you, council, for really, sending us on our way this last summer and saying, go forth. So we've done it. We are now in place to move forward. You're going to start seeing this. This is going to become very real very quickly, but it's going to be a slow process, right? It's going to take a year and a half. We're going to go through the comp plan update. You're going to talk about how much of the UGA to expand. You're going to talk about where you put this housing. You're going to talk about how does that support existing businesses. And so this is going to be slow, but it's going to unveil throughout this entire year. And really excited to be here, and thank you for sending us on our way to do that. That is it, I think, how we're doing on time. Good, all right.
Fine, yes.
Very good, thank you, sir.
No, thank you, Mr. Schuler. So with that, I will turn it over to council for comments, questions. Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
I'm going to put a nice little bow on today's conversation. So whether you think you're the best to answer it, maybe your economic development coordinator. If any of us have been at this for any period of time, and by no means am I saying I have years under my belt, but a little bit, we hear from the community constantly, what's our identity? What's the plan? What do we look like? What do we want to be? And you touched on it briefly when you're talking about, and I have personally seen plans for redevelopment from years ago that show lovely renderings of downtown and, beautiful community. So I guess my question is, how do we get there practically? Because it's real easy to talk about it. Hey, we need to really develop. How do we get there practically? How much of it is in the city's control compared to private businesses? Just what would it take for us to get the community involved, to get an identity and a plan for redevelopment, and then get that roadmap and get that redevelopment happening? What would it take just to go beyond just talking about it and creating some lovely slides?
That's a great question, because we just met with one of the architects this morning, and what we said is what this group of staff do, and what we want to come back to our elected leaders with, is not another pretty plan. We want something that's real. So we're committed to that. I'm just speaking for myself through. I have been through this for 20 years and seen how to turn this from vision to reality. So this is what I do. So I'm very excited because this is my skill set. And if you put this horse and tell him to go someplace, I'm ready to do that, along with the rest of the team. We have this amazing skill set of team that is prepared to move forward and work with our mayor and work with you to move this forward. I'm just very honestly, I think we have the right team in place to move forward. The stakeholders I have talked to, they are in the right position to move this forward. The timing is right. And, you're right, we don't control the economics, as Councilmember Wiesner knows, right? Interest rates are very high right now, but in a local government sense, we don't care about those kind of up and downs that a normal business person that has to turn a profit within 2 years or they lose their business. We have more of a longer term strategy. So this is, I'll take a little time and slow down. This isn't about trying to get development to come here tomorrow. And this is me speaking, not the city. I don't think we want to hurry out and just go get development for development, right? We want to do this right. And what this is really about this generation, yes, but it's really about building the community that's going to be here for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Because even if everything's in place, that's how long it takes to, even if you had developers lined up ready to go, it takes a long time to make these investments. It's tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And so it's for your kid or our grandkids that are living here in 2040, which is just around the corner, what kind of vision are we trying to build for them? So I guess part of the answer is this is a long-term process, right? But we'll start to unroll that out this year. And this is a really exciting year for you because you are going to be part of this key 10-year part to see where we send this. There are a couple of real things, and I already mentioned them. Parking is the big one. To build surface parking under these stormwater rules, it basically makes it cost prohibitive. And I'm trying to answer without going on for 45 minutes. The reality is that people are realizing that you go build all those parking lots and the economic development is not there. You make all this investment, it doesn't really provide you with an ongoing investment. It's really damaging to your community long-term. And so we need to find that right balance for Oak Harbor. That's going to be a big decision of how we move forward. And we can literally bring you hundreds of examples. But having gone through this and been with this, where I used to live, Woodinville has done this, Bothell has done this, right? Fairhaven and Bellingham has done this. Ginger, who was just here before, is inviting us to go up there and meet with a developer. So let's not talk about the city, right, Bothell, and we all have opinions about. Now that I've lived on Oak Harbor, whenever I hit Arlington, I've hit the city, and I feel like I'm off the island, and it feels weird now. I love it. And so Fairhaven, how many of those buildings have been built recently? And yet they fit beautifully with those buildings from the 1890s. So it can be done. And I'm not saying we're trying to be a Fairhaven. I'm just saying, right, we have a vision, it can happen. If we want to talk about the economics, here's my thoughts. The Seattle area, and I know you all know this, but the Seattle area is one of the most successful high-tech places in the world, right? The Fortune 10 companies live here. The Puget Sound region, Snohomish County, King County, Pierce County, they have agreed in Vision 2050 to not expand their UGA. They are building something like 50,000 multifamily units a year. I forget the exact thing. And they're building like 5,000 or 10,000 single-family units a year. They're going to run out of single-family pretty quick. Those places are really changing quickly. And if you look at Bellingham, oh my goodness, I went up there to look at what it would be to buy a place up there, and it's $750 a foot to live in Bellingham. So again, I'm not, you know what I mean? The economics are here. We can, in my opinion, I think the first thing we need to do is make sure we build a place that you are excited to have your kids and grandkids live, that meets your vision, that gets you excited, that's a livable place, that when you have visitors come, you're excited to bring them to Oak Harbor. That's number one. Number two, I think the economics are here. I think they're very favorable for us, and if we set the right conditions, they will come.
To add to that a little bit, since you kind of opened it up to other people, vibrant community is the word I'm looking for, and I kind of feel like we need a vibrant downtown, we need a vibrant marina, we need a vibrant Midway area we have some decay and old infrastructure in, we need a vibrant industrial area, and we need to continue to be a suitable area and a great attraction to the Navy.
So how much of that is within the city's control compared to private business? I'll use an easy example.
Yeah.
Pioneer, okay? Yeah, we have people who say, oh, maybe it could have a little cute Dutch facade, or maybe it could be like a Mill Creek sort of. I know you're familiar with Mill Creek. Those are great ideas, but how much of that is within the city's ability, and how much is taking buy-in from the community? I mean, are we forcing businesses to redevelop themselves? I mean, how much is within our ability, and we need the buy-in from the community, and private businesses
Right.
need to step up?
You're right. I think that the short answer is 100% is within your control. You are in the driver's seat. You determine whether that happens or not. And I only say that from my experience of dealing with hundreds of these in the Seattle area, right? In each case, it took the government to buy a piece of property or to make a big change, to do some sort of public-private partnership, to show the private industry that it can be done in that neighborhood. Once that happened, then others, private folks don't want to take all that risk. That's the hard part for them, is to be that first person and to try to convince, your angel investors to all give you, $100,000 to be that first one out of the gate. That's just not private market has a hard time doing that. So that's where the government can show that we can do that we can show that vision, and that we can create the kind of environment to make that work. Then what tends to happen is others then go, oh, I see the vision of Oak Harbor. I want to be a part of that. You know what? They're great to, I could mention some developers we've talked to, but they've said Oak Harbor, it was a lousy place to do business. And they're just talking about trying to do a remodel on an existing business. If we create that environment and they come here and they realize, oh, this is the vision and they're going to help us get there, then they're willing to make those private investments. And if you own a business, you're able to then say, I'm committed to making an expansion because I see the vision and I can see me being part of it. It's still a scary thing as a private business owner, as you know, to make those big investments. That's never easy, but you can see, you feel good about making those investments because you can see the return on your investment.
So, and the whole key on economic development and public works and working all together is really creating that synergy. And I think with our plan, with our vision here, with our taking some risk here and possibly selling property at a lower interest to get the development we need, those are the tools we have. So certainly it's a partnership, but I think the commitment we have here as staff and as hopefully as the council is to have that, develop that synergy so we get that interest and that revitalization and that vibrant community status.
But whether it's, and so we could go through all of these, and again, Anacortes, Burlington, Bellingham, you know, all of our neighbors, I just got mentioned, Bremerton, I'd love to send you the report. They just went through this with the Navy, right? And they had that shipyard, and they were trying to figure out how to bring, I forget, they're going to hire 5,000 more people that need to work at the shipyard, and are they all going to park in downtown, you know, city of Bremerton? So that is literally a report from 2023 of how Bremerton worked with the Navy and created a plan for their downtown. So, I mean, this is in place, and in each case, the city, so in that case, the Navy explained very well, it was not their role, it's not their role to do this local government planning. They have limits on what they needed to do. It had to be the city of Bremerton that took the lead and created that vision.
Well, I look forward to seeing it. This is exciting stuff. I love the passion and the knowledge that you have, and I'd love to see this get done. I understand it takes a long time. It would just be nice, you know, let's move past talking and let's get it done.
Very good.
And all in due time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey, and I was just going to add on to what you said, build it and they will come. So we support you, and yes. Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Steve, you know how I feel about this, don't you? What I just wanted to say, I appreciate your excitement and your passion about it, right? I can tell you're excited about it, and I hope that excitement becomes contagious, right? I hope it spreads quicker than COVID, right? I mean, the reality is we all need to get on board and get behind the simple facts that we have aged infrastructure, and the opportunity for replacing that infrastructure is redevelopment. And I love the way you presented that, right? The middle is expensive, people are not going to see the changes. All those changes will be in the ground, right? And very costly to do with people in place. So the choice is to either let things continue the path they're heading, which we all know what happens as the infrastructure continues to age, or redevelop. Yeah, it's frustrating. You know how many plans? I think I mentioned this to you in your office when you took over. There, a bunch of files, books sitting up on the shelf. There are all these plans that have been discussed for years and years. So it's not that we don't understand the basics of infrastructure and aging, and it's not that we haven't been talking about it for years, and thinking about the long-range planning and the long-range effects of it. It's not that that's the case. It's just that that's all we've done. Right, it's talked about it, right, and done studies and stuff, and yeah, if we all had the magic checkbook, right, we'd all write the magic checkbook, you know, and just make it all happen. But we need to obviously continue the conversation, but we need to continue the conversation in such a fashion that we understand how we're going to move it forward, and moving it forward does mean things like what we're doing. You know, why would anybody redevelop a two-story building if all they could put there is another two-story building? Right? That's why going to 5 stories is so important in our downtown, right? There has to be a reason to redevelop something that's already been developed, and that reason is to be able to develop it bigger and better, right? Which then the revenue makes sense for itself. And so we need to continue doing what we're doing with our code, and we do need to understand that when we change the code, there are ramifications, some of them good, some of them bad, and we do have to think those through, but change is inevitable. You're absolutely right about that we either change or we just keep doing what we're doing, and the middle is just really not a good place to be when you're talking about infrastructure. So thanks again for your excitement, and I look forward to continuing to support you, and you know, I'll continue to be in your ear, right? I know you know that, and you know, we'll continue to work together to try and actually you know, make something happen. But thanks for the presentation.
Good.
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Anyone else want to ask any questions or make any comments? All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Schuler.
Thank you, Mayor Wright.
All right. So with that, we will move on to our last item, which is the city administrator's report, and we will turn to Mr. Blaine Oborn.
All right, I was committed to do a short meeting and end at 3:30 today.
We have
so-
plenty of time here.
So we're
We're
right there. So with that, I didn't plan to go over any items today. I'll just take any questions. And I know most of us want to talk about community and support the school district and go to their state of the schools at 4:30. So I'll take any questions now or later.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. Councilmember Stuckey.
If you can speak on it, I was looking at the city attorney breakdown. I've never seen Parks and Rec that high. Is this regarding a special project or something, or is that something you can speak on?
Trying to
Yeah,
put my thoughts together.
29, it has, for city attorney services, it has 29% Parks and Rec, and I've never seen it remotely that high.
I will follow up on
Okay,
that one.
appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Anyone else for Mr. Oborn? All right, well then I will say if there's no further business, we will thank you all at this time. Oh, you have more, I'm sorry, we do have, Councilmember Heisen has something.
Sorry, I'll try to make this quick. Okay. I have a request for a future agenda. Can we get an update or a progress report from our lobbyist? I know that we only hired them recently, but I'd like some kind of a status report. And on that note, one of the things that we talked to them about doing is helping us plan our trip to DC. So that's happening March 11th, is the conference that we usually go to. So if we're going to the conference, anyway, so we should probably have that conversation soon, coming up with a game plan. Council hasn't decided who's going yet, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things our lobbyist suggested was that while we can go to the Hill and visit our legislators during the conference, if we're going to them with any big sincere ask, we should probably do it at a time that's not in March, because on that same, 2 or 3 days, they're getting dozens and dozens of cities and it's overwhelming. So if we visited them, on a random week in, April or something, then we would have their full attention, theoretically. I think that's a great idea. So I don't see the DC trip discussion on any of our future agendas, but we need to come up with a game plan. What I don't want is for us to just go and do the same thing that we've done year after year after year. So, yeah.
So, a couple things. The lobbyists are coming in on the 31st.
31st, and we've already
January.
had 2 meetings with them. We've already started strategizing for the the trip
So-
to
and
Pentagon.
So the meeting on the 31st is going to be in conjunction with the City Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, I'm sorry. And then I think it will be from that meeting that we get a lot of direction and planning to have more concrete deliverables for council, which I think we were also going to make part of the discussion on the 12th, or certainly part of the next workshop or city council meeting, so, yeah.
Thank you. I just didn't want it to sneak up on us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Any other new business or items for discussion to be brought up or talk about? All right, so we just adjourn the meeting. The city workshop council is, workshop is adjourned.